Cooper Flagg, top prospect in the class of 2024 and the favorite to be the number one pick in the 2025 NBA draft, has publicly committed to the Duke Blue Devils. It happened early on Monday. He chose Duke over UConn. For those unfamiliar, and you really shouldn't be, he's a 6'8" forward from Maine who has developed into one of the more interesting prospects we've seen in recent years. He has been thought of this way, for several years now. He reclassified earlier in this preseason, and now we know he is going to play his college basketball at Duke. I think we kind of knew this as recently as last week, and the initial thought was that he was going to publicly commit last week, but then, of course, there was a tragic mass shooting in the state of Maine that was subsequently led to a manhunt. There was a lot of confusion and, frankly, terror in the region last week. So, understandably, Cooper Flagg delayed his announcement. But with that situation now resolved, Cooper Flagg decided to announce the commitment to Duke earlier today. Norlander, just your thoughts. I know it didn't catch you off guard because we've been waiting on this to podcast, but your thoughts on Jon Scheyer landing the best high school senior, at the very least, in the country.
Yeah, no doubt. A few thoughts. One kind of unrelated, but I thought about this as I went on HQ earlier today. To give our listeners and viewers a sense of where you evaluate Cooper Flagg right now. If Cooper Flagg was eligible right now to play college basketball this season, where would you think you would have put him on your personal list of the best players in the sport? Where do you think he would fall? Top 3, top 5, top 10, top 15? Where do you think you'd put him?
Okay, not ahead of Zach Edey, just because you can't do that.
Agreed, for sure.
Second on my list, I think, is I would consider taking him all the way up to number 2.
I would as well. So my list of the best players entering this season was Edey, then Baycott, then Kalkbrenner, Isaiah Collier, Justin Edwards. I think Cooper Flagg's skill set is advanced enough where I think I would expect him to have the potential to be the second most impactful player of the sport this season. He's going to play another year of high school ball, of course, and he recently just reclassified to move up a class. His skill set is awesome. We've talked about him plenty on the show previously, this summer and even last summer. If you are the type to follow college basketball and recruiting, you've known about Cooper Flagg for a couple of years now. Yes, it's a sensation because he comes from the state of Maine, and, incredible on its own. I mean, shouts to Saddleback, shouts to Sugarloaf, and shouts to Sunday River, 3 great mountains to ski at in Maine. Shouts to Ogunquit, a great spot to take the fam. Maine does not produce high-level Division I basketball players on an annual basis, let alone every 3 or 4 years. But Flagg is that, and with that comes a very fascinating, unique part of his story that he is this guy that, who comes from that part of the country. His mom was a really, really good player at Maine and has been, his family's been a major factor in his development. And now he's spending his final season at Montverde. Duke is going to get a guy who will enter next season with almost as much hype as any freshman we've had in the past decade. And I say that with Zion Williamson included. We can get a little more into his skill set in just a second here, but as I said on HQ earlier on Monday, Zion Williamson and how we view him and his run at Duke now, understandably so and rightfully so, is through the rearview mirror of how generationally different he was as a player in a Duke uniform. But before he got to campus, yes, he was highly anticipated, but guess what? Wasn't ranked first, wasn't ranked second, wasn't ranked 3rd or 4th. Zion Williamson was the number 5 ranked player in his class at 247 Sports. In fact, 2 of his teammates, some guy named RJ Barrett, and then, of course, Cam Reddish, were 1 and 2 in that class. So going into that season, in fact, Parrish and I were at that Champions Classic in Indianapolis that year when Duke destroyed Kentucky and really announced his potential, and Zion Williamson therein. In fact, I remember talking to Mike Schmitz, now with the Portland Trailblazers, formerly of ESPN. We talked about, I remember sitting with him about an hour and a half before the game on the second level of the Pacers home joint where they played the Champions Classic that season, and saying, like, love Barrett, I want to see what Zion can do. Like, I'm a little curious on how impactful a guy he's going to be with Duke, considering his skill set and what he does. Lo and behold, Williamson becomes just an outrageous statistical outlier. We'll see if Cooper Flagg can be that. Asking him to be that, I think, is asking too much. But going into his college season, Parrish, he's ranked higher. Zion committing to Duke was not completely a bolt from the blue, but it was not an automatic. When he did it, it surprised some folks. Remember?
Oh no, that was surprising. That was a shot. Like, that was one. With all due respect to the crystal balls, I think just about everybody had this one wrong.
I think so as well. And I remember when it happened, because I actually mentioned skiing just a couple minutes ago. I happened to be skiing in Vermont with some buddies. So that was the one weekend during the season that I took off when he committed. And I remember getting texts about it that he was going to Duke, and looking at my phone being like, really? It's going to be Duke? So anyway, I bring that up to say this. Going into college, the Cooper Flagg Duke connection, anticipation, hype around him, I actually think it will be greater than what Zion was before day one playing game one. What Flagg will be once he gets to college, let's not try and ask him to be as good as Zion Williamson was, because from a PER standpoint, he had the greatest season that's on record at Sports Reference, and he's not exactly the same kind of player, but he's a ton of fun, incredible defender, incredible two-way player, can handle the ball, can bring it up, distributes well, shoots well, has a good body frame already. He'll get even stronger. It's obviously a huge day for Duke. We can speak into, and I'm sure you will, about what this means for Shire and him even this is why you get the Duke job. So you can continually get top-ranked prospects, build number one classes, and we have that here. Something of an expected thing for Duke fans. UConn fans held out hope. I know there was some buzz late about maybe they'll actually pull it off, and Dan Hurley and his staff, they made an incredible push, an incredible charge. But when it came down to it, in the final days, if you will, Duke just had enough. And it's Duke. Going up against Duke, it's very, very hard. This is no stunner, but nonetheless, it's a good thing for that program and a great thing for college hoops. So, by the way, that a guy who's considered potentially the best prospect in the past decade or so winds up choosing to take the college route instead of going to other avenues outside of that.
As the great Pete Gillen once said, Duke is Duke, and it is impressive that, at least from a recruiting perspective, nothing has fallen off. You could look at the recruiting rankings the last 5 years under K, the first few years under John, and you can't tell any difference whatsoever. They're still getting the same caliber of guys they've always gotten, or at least have gotten for a while now. And so this is another step in the right direction. Duke does now have the number one recruiting class in 2024. We'll get you through that in a second. But the Zion thing was interesting in the sense that I don't really remember. I'm sure there's another example, but sometimes somebody comes to college with the reputation of, yeah, he's going to be the number one pick in the draft. And then you watch him and you go, oh yeah, he's the number one pick in the draft. Like maybe that's John Wall, right? John Wall enrolls at Kentucky. Yes. And you're like, I think John Wall's going to be the number one pick in the draft. And then you watch him and you go, yep, he is. Anthony Davis would be another one of those probably. Zion was, as you noted accurately, the third best recruit in Duke's class that year. This is the part that I don't think is very common. Nobody had him projected to be number one in the draft. No, literally nobody. And within 3 weeks, maybe a month of his freshman season, everybody had him projected to go number one in the draft. It happened pretty quickly, and he never let go of that. Obviously, his NBA career has been a bit up and down. He has been an all-star, but he has barely played. But one of the reasons people thought about Zion coming into college, again, he was a top 5 recruit, but he wasn't the best. And the reason some people were skeptical of him as an NBA prospect, and really on some level of what he might be able to do in college, was because it was like, okay, you can bully ball people in high school, but you're not going to be able to do that in the ACC. And then it was like, oh, yeah, okay, maybe you can do that in the ACC. And then there were some still out there like, yeah, but can you do it in the NBA? Buddy, as somebody who sat and watched him last week, he can still do it in the NBA. When he's healthy, he is still awesome. But that was obviously a unique situation. Cooper Flagg enters Duke ranked higher, with a better reputation as a player. But I think you'd be crazy to think that Cooper Flagg will match Zion's productivity, if only because almost nobody ever has. It was a historically great college basketball season from Zion Williamson. I don't expect that from Cooper Flagg, but I do expect him to be great. It's why, circle back to your initial question. If he were entering college right now and I were putting together a list, top 101 players, I'd go Zach Edey 1, and I might really go Cooper Flagg 2. And it wouldn't bother me that, but he's really young because he's always been really young playing against older people. And it has, I don't want to say always, but he has for a while been playing against older people, and it has rarely been a problem. He looks the part. He's fabulous. He's fabulous. I know some people wonder if it'll plateau a little bit at the NBA level, but I'll worry about that later.
Yeah.
For now, I tell you what, I've never seen him in a basketball competition where he didn't look like he was special. And I'm going to assume that's going to continue.
Yeah, he's got a lot to his game there, and I believe we have a poll up in the chat, Nada, right now. Just asking our viewers on YouTube right now. All things aside, where would you have rather seen Cooper Flagg play college basketball? Would you rather see him go to where he's going, Duke, or would you have rather seen him go to UConn? Obviously, both those programs have national championships. UConn has the most recent one and gave it a really good push there. I think even getting that deeply involved in this kind of recruitment, Adam Finkelstein talked about this earlier today on HQ as well, and wrote about it. To get that deeply involved after like Flagg was, for a good year plus, Flagg was just assumed that he would be going to Duke, and it seems like they really made it a tough decision for that family. Do we have some votes in yet? And maybe I'm a little premature on this, but I believe you posted the poll. What is the out of curiosity for anyone that is watching and voted through right now? What is the return on Flagg? Would they have rather seen him at Duke or UConn?
So far, the poll is 55-45 correctly for Duke.
Correctly for Duke. Well, why do you say correctly? Out of curiosity, Nada?
We have a flamboyant, outwardly demonstrative white guy that's actually good at basketball playing for Duke. I love numbers. I love clicks. There's no better place for this man to be the second coming of Christian Laettner than at Duke.
Well, okay, so two thoughts on that. It is undeniable that because Cooper Flagg is incredibly awesome at basketball and is another really talented white player that's going to play at Duke, and Duke is a polarizing program, that this is going to bring attention. It's going to give people reason to look at Duke as an antagonistic entity within the sport. But I'm not going to presume it not. I'm not saying you were explicitly putting this on his shoulders, that Cooper Flagg, who will play 1 year in college, Christian Laettner played 4, will want to or embrace any kind of villain role, will approach anything close to the likes of Grayson Allen. That being said, Parrish, I think you would agree that we can acknowledge the obvious thing here, and that is that Duke landed the rightful and deserved #1 recruit in the class, and in doing so, by bringing in a highly heralded white player, that just seems to breed a lot of intention and to give people reason to hate Duke again, which in a broad scope, I mean, whatever, do what you got to do. It is good for the sport. It is great for the sport that Cooper Flagg did not want to go to Overtime Elite or G League Ignite. He wanted to have the college experience, and it is good for the sport that Duke, which will have a preseason top 5 team a year from now, and Flagg, which I think will be one of the rare players as a freshman to be a first-team All-American in the preseason. We almost never get that. Choosing that, it is better for college basketball that even if this trope can be a little worn out and played out, it nonetheless might prove true at Duke next season. Would you agree?
Sure. But is it strictly a race thing? Did people hate Zion Williamson?
No, I don't think so. I think there was I don't think there was a lot of backlash to Zion. No.
So is it people? I understand there are people who hate Duke, right? I get that. But when we're talking about hated Duke players, does it have to be a white person?
It normally is.
It normally is.
It normally is. Yes, it normally is. And whatever dynamic there, that's a fascinating, separate cultural conversation, I guess. But I think that does play a factor here. Here's
my challenge to Cooper Flagg. Presumably, he's going to be awesome. Can you be the rare, perhaps unprecedented, awesome white player at Duke that people actually love?
Love, not even love.
Yeah, I mean, people say, man, I don't care about Duke, but God, I love Cooper Flagg. Isn't he great?
I mean,
they exist.
I'm wondering, can you do that?
Filipowski is not hated right now. Filipowski is a top 5 player in the sport, returning at Duke. He doesn't receive this, and nor should he. And I'm not saying if you're a super talented white guy going to Duke, you're deserving of the scorn. Cooper Flagg doesn't deserve any of that. I'm saying from a broad perspective, people that love to hate Duke, first of all, having a villain in the sport is a good thing from a program perspective. That is a good thing for college basketball to ignite these kinds of emotional responses. But Cooper Flagg, from all we've seen of him to this point, upstanding young man, the pride of Maine, and has done nothing but the right thing so far in his life. So he's not deserving of this. I'm just saying some of it seems unavoidable. And to your wonderment, or posing a question or potentially even a challenge, I wonder if he can get there. He's good enough to make it possible because the way he plays basketball, it not just is effective and great, it looks fun. Like, he is a very fun player to watch. How much they actually allow him to bring the ball up the floor, we'll wait and see on all of that. But he's got a great eye, can distribute well. Again, tremendous shot blocking instincts from all over the floor. On ball, weak side defender. It's terrific. And as long as he continues to build himself out there, it's hard to see how he will not be a player of immense value and impact right away.
So people are asking in the chat, was JJ Redick hated? I think he was, wasn't
he? That's not even a question.
Right.
I think it's Redick, Leitner, and Grayson for the most hated of all, and the reasons differ if you really want to bury into them. But yes, and you can go back before that. I mean, it's not the same level, but Josh McRoberts, who, by the way, is one of 5 number 1 rated prospects in a given class that have committed to Duke. It was McRoberts, and this is obviously the modern era, so we're only going back like 20 or so years. McRoberts, Okafor, Barrett, Marvin Bagley III, and now Cooper Flagg. Those are your 5 top-ranked prospects that have committed to Duke in the past 2 or so decades.
All right, Cooper Flagg, that's my challenge to you. Be a awesome but also beloved white star at Duke.
And I wouldn't say it's only been...
Can you pull that off?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's only been white players at Duke that have been hated. Jay Williams, when he was Jason Williams, he had a streak in him that I think caused him to be something of a little bit of a villain. Do you remember that, GP?
I do not remember Jason Williams, but I don't remember anything.
That's also, that's kind of true there. But yeah, it's an interesting... it's an interesting dynamic, and we don't see it with all players, and nor should we. But
somebody in the chat, Greg Paulus had to deal with it.
Greg Paulus, yeah, but Greg Paulus almost like he was, and you talk about a guy who, like, Greg Paulus now coach at Niagara.
By the way, like, people, this is the thing. Greg Paulus, nicest guy in the world.
Such a sweet,
like the sweetest man in the world.
In fact, I use the phrase "such a sweet man." He would appreciate us using the phrase "sweet man." Like he got. Who was the player? Who was the Carolina player that really got him with the dunk? I'm blanking on it. But like that almost absolved him of all his wrongdoing forever. Forget it. Someone in the chat help me. Gerald Henderson? No. Who was the Carolina
Danny
player
Green.
that dunked? What's up?
I think it was Danny Green.
I think it was Danny Green. That's a great call, Nada. The Danny Green dunk all over Paulus, which is immortalized in a photo forever. And the chat's really picking us up there. Yeah, it's Danny Green. That almost absolves him of that. But yeah, no, it's a huge thing for Duke and for Shire, who continues to be able to recruit. And there's been a couple of mentions in the chat, and I get this thought, Parrish. Well, Shire's been able to continue to do this, but don't forget who's still occupying that office, not so far away from Cameron, referring to Kay, of course. Shire was the lead recruiter on a lot of the top prospects and while Kay is the coach, and that was by far the most influential factor for Duke getting the prospects it got. A major reason why Shire got this job was he had established himself as a veritable recruiter for just about any top tier prospect, and that has not dropped off whatsoever. You want to know why Shire got the job, and I will qualify this because he's their preseason top 5. You got to go out and do this season. Like, you've got to go out and be the best team in the ACC. You've got to go out and prove that you validate that ranking. So we'll see if they can prove it on the court, but off the court, it has gone up. It hasn't been static and steady or dipped. It has gone up from a recruiting standpoint, and that is one of the major reasons why Shire, at a relatively young age, got this job over plenty of others who have died to get that opportunity.
No, like I said, from the recruiting perspective, nothing has changed at Duke. You could argue it's gotten better. But yes, they have to do it on the court. Last season they finished well. I mean, I guess the very end wasn't great, but they won. They as the calendar flipped to mid-February, early March, that it finally got healthy. Lively got a little more comfortable. They got good. Duke got good. Duke did not have a great season, but Duke got good as the season progressed. And now you've got a team. I mean, if you're John Shire, you've got a team good enough right now to win the national championship, and then whatever happens this season, you got Cooper Flagg on the way. He has set himself up for success. And I guess to address what you referenced in the chat, it is obviously true that whoever the Duke coach would be right now, that person would be benefiting from the legacy of Mike Krzyzewski. Josh Pastner at Memphis used to talk about this all the time. Like he early was recruiting at an extremely high level, in part because he was still recruiting to Memphis, and people were connecting that to Derrick Rose and Chris Douglas Roberts and a national championship game and I can't remember the player, but Josh told me one time that he had an in with a recruit who's the main reason this person was interested in Memphis was because Chris Douglas Roberts was his favorite college basketball player. And he was like, I don't even know if the guy knows that I didn't coach Chris Douglas Roberts, but that's like that. I'm still living off of that a little bit. John is living off of that at Duke, but any coach would be. I guess what I'm trying to say is this. Any coach at Duke would be able to recruit well, and that is because of what Mike did over decades. But I don't think Mike Krzyzewski is recruiting this basketball team, or that the players are going there because of Mike Krzyzewski. They're going to Duke because it's Duke and because of, let's just say it, name, image, and likeness. That's why Duke is, if you were trying to list the reasons Duke is flourishing and recruiting under John Shire, the reasons would be because it's Duke, name, image, and likeness, and John Shire in some order. I wouldn't even put Mike Krzyzewski in the top three.
Yeah, and I'm sure that publicly Duke and the Flagg family aren't going to seek to boast about this, and that's fine. They don't have to. It's whatever. But it would not surprise me whatsoever if the reality, even if it isn't materially proven to be, is that you have Cooper Flagg making more money entering college than any basketball player in this young NIL era. If you told me that Cooper Flagg, after the NIL collective at Duke and his own individual opportunities, was making more than $3 million for his one and only season at Duke, I would believe you without hesitation. I think that kind of money is very much on the table when you consider the amount of hype that's been around him on the Nike EYBL circuit for the past 2+ seasons. You go to Duke, and there's nothing wrong with it. By all means, go ahead and do it. It is the nature when you get into these high-profile recruitments. Every prospect, evaluates how much that means to them differently. But yes, NIL is also a major factor there. And if Duke behind the scenes is capable of affording that, and Cooper Flagg, because he carries immense value. What did I say earlier? He is going to be more anticipated going into Duke than even Zion Williamson was, because a lot of Zion's appeal happened once we actually he was a social media phenomenon, a dunking viral sensation. We covered his game against LaMelo Ball in Vegas. There was plenty with Zion there, but he had a loaded class with him, and RJ Barrett and Cam Reddish were also plenty known. Duke's building a number one class. There are going to be other known players on that roster. Don't get me wrong, but Flagg is at a different level. And so, yes, understandably so, as the market will dictate, he will command a huge price, and he is going to be able to step in. And this is the whole new world we're talking about. When we talk about NIL and how it can impact all sorts of different kind of programs in different kind of ways, it's very nuanced. But in the broad sense, where it matters most, is players like Cooper Flagg, who, because they have built up a reputation, deservedly so, it is refreshing to see that if those monetary opportunities are out there to be had, by all means, man, go and get it. Nothing is guaranteed to you. Nothing is promised. We hope he has a flourishing freshman season with immense potential. That's all realized, but nothing of that is guaranteed. So if he's got that much value as a 17 or 18-year-old, he deserves to cash in on every single cent of it.